It's amazing. I feel like he's very calm, and I feel like the digestion through my fingers.
Amazing, right?
Yeah.
Hello, everybody, to wherever you're joining from around the world. It's a great honor for me to host you all from my headquarters here in Washington, D.C. Thank you for joining our timely response series for parents, teachers, and really anyone who is in a position to be a role model for a child. My name is Samir Mansour, and I'm the founder and CEO of No Limit Generation. We at No Limit Gen realize that not everyone has access to the world's leading child well-being experts. So in times of crisis or challenge, our mission is to bring the professionals to you. In this way, we can create supportive environments for children to heal, rise, and thrive into their full potential. On our website, nolimitgen.org, you can find practical child well-being training videos on many timely topics, everything from children's mental health, protection, and well-being to healing practices and activities. We would greatly appreciate it if you could share our mission with the good people who can benefit from it in your network. All our content and programming is made possible with your generous support, so please consider a donation through our website so we can continue to support you with quality programming. So quick note before we get started, we are video recording this for publication online so that you may access it later. If you have your camera on, please feel free to turn it off at this time. Additionally, all our live broadcasts are designed to be participatory. There's a chat box on the right corner of your screen, which you can use to ask questions. We'll also ask you questions throughout the presentation so you can share your thoughts with the audience via chat. And now on to the show. Physical distancing from COVID-19 guidance has disrupted many of the normal connections that help young children, babies, and families feel safe. Children are limited from healthy social interactions with friends at this critical stage of their development. Normal visits and healthy bonding between relatives and newborns are restricted. Babies are also born into a world of masks where emotions and facial recognition remain hidden from view. This special workshop will explore the ways in which caregivers and families can overcome these barriers to stay connected with their children and develop positive bonds of safety, connectedness in these unprecedented times. And with that, I'll introduce today's guest. Dr. Marilyn Sanders is a board-certified pediatrician who cares for critically ill babies, infants, and their families at the Connecticut Children's Medical Center Newborn Intensive Care Unit. She is also professor of pediatrics at the University of Connecticut School of Medicine. As an occupational therapist, certified infant instructor, and breath, body, mind instructor who has focused on blending traditional therapeutic methods and integrative approaches as an occupational therapist in neonatal intensive care for the last 30 years. Her educational background includes a master's degree in behavioral sciences and applied physiology from Columbia University and a certification in biodynamic craniosacral therapy, say that 3 times fast, through the International Affiliation of Biodynamic Trainings. So Dr. Sanders and Phyllis Aries, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Samir.
So Marilyn, let's go ahead and get started with you. We're all being told these days to look out for one another by physically distancing as much as possible. So while there are important public health reasons for this, we as human beings are social creatures from birth. And we need this social interaction in order to develop in a healthy way. So Dr. Sanders, how about how about you lead us through how we evolved in this way?
Samir and organizers at No Limit Generation, thank you so much for inviting Phyllis and I to talk about the importance of being able to connect mothers, babies, and young children during this very difficult time of COVID-19. So I have nothing to disclose other than my passion for caring for babies and their families. As we think about supporting babies, infants, young children, and their families, I'd like for everyone to keep in mind a new way of thinking about how we are in the world. We talk about a lot what we think about things, but we don't talk as much about how we feel about things, and it's how we feel about things, and how we feel in a particular situation or with particular people. For example, whether we feel safe, whether we feel like we're in danger, or whether we feel like we're absolutely in a life-threatening situation that determines both our emotions and behaviors, either with a particular person or in a particular situation. And the importance of that is that this represents the signals that we are getting from our unconscious nervous system about how we are in the world. So when you think about babies, human babies, of course, are mammals. And as mammals, we are at the top of the evolutionary ladder. When you think about when you think about creatures who are lower on the evolutionary ladder, they had very limited repertoire in terms of how they could respond if they felt unsafe. So, for example, if you think about reptiles, if the reptile sensed that a predator was in his or her midst, they had one response, and that was basically to try and camouflage or blend in or immobilize. As we came up the evolutionary ladder, birds, for example, fish, the sympathetic nervous system came on board, and the capacity was developed to be able to stand in place and fight or mobilize and flee. But only mammals can socially engage and use their social engagement capacities to help them avoid danger. So not only can we use our social engagement capacities, we must use our social engagement capacities because young mammals understand at a very visceral level, at a feeling level, in their unconscious nervous system, that they must be with their adult caregivers to survive. And you see that beautifully illustrated in these pictures of mammals, whether it be the chimpanzee and mother, the lioness and her cub, the golden retriever and her puppies at breast, or this beautiful picture of a mother-infant dyad where you don't need to know anything about this mother and this baby to know that something very good is happening and that they are safe in each other's care.
Dr. Sanders, thank you for that. And, that is a beautiful image there of bonding. So in this period, what does it mean for how we get to connect with newborns and young infants, especially?
So newborns and young infants have a number of what we call biological expectations from their caregivers. And these are obviously not coming from your thinking brain. These are coming from those deep-seated areas in your central nervous system that function unconsciously. But here's what babies expect from their caregivers. They expect their caregivers to be in proximity to them. So that's both in physical proximity to them and emotional proximity to them, meaning that they have to be emotionally available to them. They expect their caregivers to be sensitive to them. They need to feel known and understood by their caregivers. They expect their caregivers to be attuned to them. And attunement means that you can focus on being in the moment and you're not preoccupied or distracted by other things. They expect us to be contingently responsive to them. Well, what does contingent responsiveness mean? Basically, it means it's serve and return. So as I look at you, Samir, for example, I can see that you are following what I'm saying. You are giving me facial recognition that you get it. And then as I see that, I respond in return. So it's a serve and return, a back and forth that healthy mothers and their babies go through every minute. And then I expect to be connected to my caregiver, which means that we are in a process that is mutual and reciprocal, that is more than the sum of its parts. So as we think about, as we think about what it takes babies to feel safe and connected, we have to ask how evolution has prepared us to socially engage and connect. And for that, we need to talk about the unconscious nervous system, or the limbic system. I'm sure all of you have heard about somebody going limbic are going postal. Well, what does that mean? What that means is that rather than signals coming up to the thinking brain, this part of the brain, that are processed and then essentially result in behaviors, we have things that are staying at this deep-seated area of the limbic system. As mammals, we are constantly surveying the environment for signals of danger. We are constantly looking for disruption. We are constantly trying to make sure that our caregivers are there and responsive to us. And for an infant, being alone and sensing aloneness, meaning that you are not being responded to, is a signal of danger.
And so what cues does an infant look for in order to feel safe and connected? Because, if being alone is the danger signal here, we want to make sure that this newborn or this very young child is getting that safety and that feeling of connectedness. So what are they looking for?
Absolutely. So let's take a look at this picture. I'm a believer that pictures are better than 1,000 words. Let's look at this mother with her baby. Let's look how she is communicating with her baby. You see her delight in her baby with her facial expression that she's communicating to the baby. You see the baby's attentiveness to her with the alert, wide open eyes looking back at his mother as he senses his mother's joy in his being. You see it in terms of vocalizations. We all know what it's like to hold a baby, and we all know that when you hold a baby, you engage in a particular kind of vocal communication that we call motherese. It's a relatively high-pitched, gentle communication, much the same as the kind of rhythm and prosody, for example, that you see in lullabies. And you have a listening presence. So that baby knows that that mother is listening to him. Because if that baby is about 4 months old, which is what I'm going to guess, as the mother speaks to him in her motherese, he is cooing in return to her, and together, the two of them essentially choreograph a dance. So when we have that sense of safety, it fosters calm by inhibiting cues of danger. So for example, there might be a loud noise in another room, but that baby is so intent upon his mother that he may not even be distracted by it. And we know that over time, safety and connectedness lead to feelings of love and attachment. So I like to think about this in terms of what I call the safety circuit. The safer we feel in any given situation, the better we can engage. And the better we can engage over time, the better we can connect. And then it becomes iterative. So the more connected we are, the safer we feel. And over time, with that ongoing sense of safety and security, we can develop secure attachments with people who are important in our lives. And then because it's iterative, when we are with our secure attachments, we feel safe. Now, on the other hand, if an infant feels in danger, his sympathetic nervous system is going to go on overdrive. And he's going to go into what we classically think of as fight or flight. But it doesn't look like fight or flight in you or me, Samir. It looks different than that. So the sympathetic system is on hyperdrive. How do we know? The pupils, for example, are big. The muscles are pumped. There's no urination or stooling when you're feeling like this because that would interfere with you being able to get away. In an infant, however, this looks really different than in you or me, where you might just see the tensing of the muscles, for example, and the clenching of the hands. In an infant, it can take on the form as crying, as protesting, or even gaze aversion, so that if the stimulation becomes simply too much, the baby will simply avert his or her gaze. And at the very bottom of what I like to think of as the autonomic, automatic, unconscious ladder, we have feelings of life, threat, or immobilization. And these are essentially those vestigial, primitive, reptilian responses that we talked about in the earliest of evolutionary creatures, where we shut down. We may blend in. You may see it in an infant, for example. This infant looks very limp up against the mother, who clearly has tremendous of despair. You look at that face, there's no animation. She has no energy to give to that baby because of her circumstances. In an older child or even an adult, you may actually faint as a survival mechanism to get yourself away from the situation. You may become very still, or in the clinical sense, you may dissociate.
It's so helpful to understand these signs, especially for young babies and infants who don't have the words to express themselves, and we might know what we might not be aware of what's happening. So thank you for sharing these signs. And so, March came along, and all of a sudden we're told to stay at home and wear masks and socially distance. And babies are being born into this world, which is a world unlike anything we have ever experienced. It's troubling enough for us, and babies are looking for these social cues, right? But all they see are masks. And the normal affection that they might have received from relatives are, of course, limited because they're not visiting the hospital as much. So what impact does this have on their development or worldview?
Mm-hmm. Well, baby's development is dependent upon being around parents who feel safe and secure, because safety is contagious. All feeling states are contagious. State begets state. So if a mother is anxious, her infant will not feel calm and regulated. If a mother feels despair, it will be extraordinarily difficult for the baby to feel safety and security. So into this world comes COVID-19. And COVID-19 has had a dramatic effect upon not just the population at large, I think we know about that, but on pregnant women, of-age women, women who are laboring and delivering, and families as they are both preparing for labor and delivery and taking infants home. So what you see here in the picture is an example of what goes on every day now in labor and delivery suites all around the country, and I suspect all around the world as well, at least where COVID is endemic right now. That's a good portion of the world. So you see a mother who's in a mask, and imagine how that limits her baby's capacity to recognize her facial expression. He's her eyes, and we communicate a lot with her eyes, but he can't see her lower face, and her voice is going to be muffled by the mask. So that kind of lovely motherese that we all do may sound muted or very different than it would in an ordinary situation. And in addition to that, she, the mom, is going to be devoid of individuals who would be important supports for her. So there's not grandparents and family and friends coming in to congratulate them, saying, "What can I do for you? How can I help?" She's alone. She has her non-birthing partner, whoever that is. In some places, she may have a doula, if indeed people will allow you to substitute a doula, or pardon me, not to substitute a doula, but to have a doula on top of your non-birthing partner. She typically has been in self-quarantine for 3 weeks prior to coming into the hospital. And then when we discharge the mother and the baby home, they're going to go into self-quarantine as well. And I want to stress that this is for mothers who are COVID negative. If mother is actually COVID positive, it takes on an entirely different dimension, and mothers and babies can actually be separated up to several weeks until the mother is COVID-free.
Wow.
So I ask you, as you think about the experience of being in the hospital or going into the pediatric office, who's the real Dr. Sanders here? Is it the woman on your left? Or is it the woman on your right?
I don't know about everybody else, but I prefer the smile on the left.
I sure do too. I prefer the smile on the left too, Samir. And I very much want to be the smile on the left. Unfortunately, at this time, as healthcare providers, we are required, particularly in the labor and delivery situation, to wear full PPE for our own protection, because I don't need to even talk about the impact COVID has had on healthcare providers. And imagine yourself if you are in a very difficult labor and delivery situation, and ask yourself, how would it feel to talk to the Dr. Sanders on the right as opposed to the Dr. Sanders on the left? And as a matter of fact, when I recently counseled a mother who was indeed COVID positive, waiting for her first COVID negative to come back, when I walked into the room, she just looked at me and said, "Oh my gosh, how I wish I could talk to people without masks." That's the experience. So as we think then about the whole experience and how COVID has interrupted our connections and our expectations, I kind of think about it in terms of the expectations of the newborn and what COVID has superimposed upon those expectations. So newborns expect proximity, emotional and physical proximity. What do we have? We have social distancing and self-quarantine. Newborns expect sensitivity. What do we have? Absent key safety, which comes with the kind of social engagement that you saw in some of the pictures earlier on, and present cues of danger, because we're all worried. In terms of attunement, we're all preoccupied. So rather than having mother's undivided attention, in some situations, there are tremendous preoccupations due to losses that the mother or the family may have experienced. Those could be personal losses, loss of family, complications, loss of jobs, economic stress. I mean, you could just kind of go down and down and down the list of the things that preoccupy families in what has traditionally been a time of joy. When you think about contingent responsiveness and our capacity to have that kind of serve and return we talked about earlier, Samir, now we're getting cues of danger. People are dangerous. You don't want to be around people. You don't want to expose yourself to people, and you don't want to expose yourself to, or your baby, to other people. So the kinds of things that we're telling families now are basically go home, close the door, stay inside, don't let anyone in. If you feel like you have to see people, socially distance in your backyard.
It's quite a reality that we're all in today, and I think one of the statements that you use, babies' development is contingent upon their parents' worldview. That I almost pinned that in my notes as such an important reminder. And so I know that Phyllis is going to talk a little about self-care practices so that we can remain strong and we can have a sense of presence and feelings of safety within ourselves, so we can impart that worldview onto the child in these especially challenging times. So thank you, Dr. Sanders, for sharing this incredible information on the impact that COVID is having.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure, Samir.
Thank you. And so now that we have an understanding of this pandemic's implications on infant and newborn development, we're going to bring in Phyllis Aries, who is going to share with us how we can provide the safety and security cues that newborns and young children so need from at time. So Phyllis, welcome.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you perfectly.
Good. I just love Dr. Sanders' presentation. It's a beautiful exposure to what we're all going through, and I'm grateful that you have put this all together for people.
We're so honored that you're here, and your talk is all about bringing love and safety to oneself and to one's children, and the you comes before the children. So if you can kick us off by talking to us about the importance of self-care before childcare.
Yes, I'm going to screen share. Okay, so here we are. You might notice I have bringing love and safety to your children here and your baby down here. I do want to say this is about children. I am going to have more images of babies, but this definitely all applies, and I'm happy to talk about preschoolers, toddlers, any age child. So this takes us back to that age-old analogy about the airplane. And here we are on the airplane, and there's an emergency. And so what do? We need to put on our own mask first. So we all know that experience, and it's totally true for a sense of safety that we can bring to our children. Without that sense of safety, it's going to be hard for them to perceive our love, which now we totally understand. The heart-to-heart connection is really what drives our nervous system. So we really need to have that in place. Oh, why won't my slide go forward? Oh, interesting.
Maybe if helpful, Chris, would you like to share the presentation from your side?
Yes, I can do that. It'll just take me a minute to get it up. Phyllis, you could also try escaping from it and then going back into it. That may help solve the problem.
Interesting. Okay. Escape. Stop share and restart, I think.
Just try that.
Okay. Here we go. This has been my day. I used all my own techniques on myself today with technology as my baby. So here we go. Let's try it again. Okay, let's see.
There we go.
Voila. Okay, I have no disclosures. So here is a nurse, and you can see she is going through the pandemic during pregnancy. And I talked to a lot of nurses about their experiences, some with COVID, some without. She did not have COVID. But what she said to me was the same as the other nurses who did. Basically, what they felt is that they were drawn to talking to the people who they felt loved them, and the people that they felt the safest with. So once they felt they had that safety and they could talk, they felt loved, and they felt in their pregnancy that they could then be in a position to sort of, you can see, hold their babies and be present with them in a way that they might need during pregnancy. Oh no. I'm having trouble progressing. Is there any trick?
You could try the arrows on your computer. That might help. Or just go to slide.
Okay. I have no idea. So you can see how beautiful this image is, and really understanding we want to find that love and joy, which is definitely tricky right now, right? In our heart. And so how do we do it? This is basically the whole talk right here. These three things. We want to find a slow tempo, very challenging in times where there is not a pandemic.
And when you say slow tempo, is this the tempo of our lives we're talking about, or any specific aspect?
Because most of us, even prior to the pandemic, are really, the way life is, there's a lot of demands. And we are working very hard to keep up. And I think a lot of us, as we're working really hard to keep up, that part of our nervous system, the fight-flight, kind of revs up a bit. And that really needs to come down in order for that part of our nervous system, the one that's called the rest and digest, the one for that to come forward and do what we need. Especially our babies. Our babies need that slow tempo in us, and then they can draw on it. And once they draw on it, they're going to be able to digest. They're going to be able to sleep, which we sorely need, right? So starting with finding that slow tempo, and I'm going to go into it, and there's going to be a video that will show you a little bit about that also.
Amazing.
And then connecting with ourselves, and that's also very challenging for most of us, because there's a lot going on in there. So there are beautiful methods, many more than I can get into, to help us with that piece. And that's an important piece. And because once we connect with ourselves, then we're available to connect with our baby in the way they need it, so they can eat in a sound way and sleep. Okay. Oh no. I am not sure, but technology is definitely, maybe if I click here.
There we go. You got there.
Awesome. I think I have to do it twice. It wants more attention.
There we go, just like the babies.
So I love this image because I think for most of us, coming to our heart needs to be handled very delicately. And so you can see that the butterfly coming to our heart is coming down very delicately. And that is the way we need to sort of honor our experience. Once we do that, then we can pass that on, like I was just saying, to our babies. Okay.
So what are some maybe 2 or 3 self-care practices that can keep us calm and balanced? If this is so important in order for us to regulate ourselves, if that allows us to regulate our baby's emotions and feelings of safety and connectedness, can you share with us some expertise, since I know that you are certified in many of these well-being practices?
Sure. So I just love this picture, so I had it included. So basically, there are so many tools out there, and we really need to, the most important thing is we need to understand which ones work for us and which ones do not. So once we sort of go through tools and really expose ourselves and give each tool a chance, we can identify some things that might help us. But then how do we use them? So being a new mom, or being pregnant, or working, or managing a home with children that are preschoolers or toddlers, very tricky. How do we use these tools? So originally it's thought like, okay, you have to have a separate time to meditate, or you have to have a separate time to do these things. That is really not what is going to work for most of us, especially being a new mom or a working mom or a dad or a partner. So I want to include everyone in this process. Everyone is important. So what is the way to integrate them? So it's wherever you are and whatever you're doing, right then and there. So if you're feeding your baby, if your baby's sleeping and you're going to take a nap as you go to sleep, maybe you want to use a tool. So if your mind starts racing, there's a way to manage that. Oh, here we go. I'm going to click on it. I think this might be the trick. Yeah. Okay. So, breath, body, mind practice. This, I don't know if all of you are familiar, but Dr. Patricia Gerbard and Dr. Richard Brown have put together amazing techniques. What they've done is they've integrated so many different areas. They've used movement and combined it with different breathing techniques. And the movement is really instrumental. You see on the left side, shaking, tapping, ha breath, sky and earth. These movements are a good start, especially for our preschoolers or our toddlers or us, when we have all this anxiety just tightening all our muscles. So somebody says, just take a deep breath, you're not going to be able to do it. You're going to try and your rib cage constricted, you're just feeling tight in your spine. So the idea is that there's a way to shake it out. There's a way to tap on your meridians. There's a way to push it out. And the children of all ages seem to love this. And you can get extremely creative with it. The ha breath is you breathe in slowly through your nose and then you push out saying ha. And kids love to just shout it out, and they really are getting that anxiety, the stress level down, so that now they're ready for some of this down here.
And Phyllis, just for the audience to know, I'm posting a link into the chat so that you can view Dr. Patricia Gerbard and Dr. Brown's Breath, Body, Mind workshop that we did, I think it was about 2 weeks ago. So we have the recording of that there where you can experience the power of what you're talking about with coherent breathing. He leads us through guided meditations. And then also if you go down towards the bottom of this page, this is our COVID-19 response section, you'll see that there are healing activities for children. And you'll actually see me doing some of these exercises in the main image. But we have all these practices that you listed here. There's videos of me doing them with children so that you can pretty much put it on your computer or your TV and do it with the children. And you're going to feel the benefits of these practices. They really work, and many medical studies have been done on the effectiveness of this to reduce stress and increase clarity.
Yes, and you know what's really fun about this work is that you can be totally creative. So you could go onto your website, get a feeling about some of the techniques, and then let's say you have a 4-year-old little girl or boy, and you could just make it up as you go along. You could stand with them, you could make it that you're wind blowing the tree and that you come to a calm place, the wind stops, and you're going to send your breath down through your feet and your love to your mom and back. So it's easy to kind of just be creative and go with what they might need. So, and the coherent breathing we'll get into a little bit later. It is 5 breaths per minute, which really slows down your nervous system. And the important part to understand, I think, about coherent breathing is that it slows you down, yes, which is what we're looking for. The really outstanding part is it helps you think clearly. So not all breathing techniques do that, but especially now with COVID and pandemic, we want to be able to problem solve. We want to not have a mushy brain from being so melted down. We want to be able to be slow enough, but clear. And coherent breathing really brings that about. The sound of the chimes that you'll hear later on in the video is so soothing that I also, instead of just starting with the babies in neonatal, I backed it up to working in acute maternity before they were born. And it was wonderful. The roommates were like, yeah, we just put the chimes on because it's so soothing. So even if you're doing the dishes, whatever you are doing, there's a way to use these resources in the middle of your daily routine.
Absolutely. And coherent breathing, for those who aren't familiar and who haven't had a chance to view some of this work yet, you can do it anytime. You can do it, standing in line somewhere. You can do it while walking. You can do it while sitting or meditating. But essentially, it's about 4 to 6 seconds breath in. So slow breath in, and then same 4 to 6 seconds slow release of the breath out. And you'll see that has immediate response in your nervous system to really bring calm and balance and clarity into your life. And so, Phyllis, we have about 5 to 10 minutes left. I'd like to get in a couple of questions from the audience. But we've seen wonderful videos of you guiding mothers as they connect deeply with their babies. And you can really see in these videos that, the bond deepen as the baby relaxes into the safety and love created in the moment. Can you walk us through some of these example techniques?
Sure. So I will speed along a little bit through some of these. So there's mindfulness as a method, which is amazing, has 4,000 studies out there showing its benefits. This is also, just to mention, craniosacral therapy for creating a kind of comfortable connection. And you can see how that butterfly is not rushing away with this light-hearted kind of connection. And here, another lesson from the work of craniosacral therapy. We want to be soft. And you'll hear me talking through this mom. So here we are. What are we going to do? This baby is obviously going through a hard time. One thing to be aware of, when our baby is on their back, their organs are exposed. And as mammals, we are mammals. And so your dog is not going to roll over on their back and expose all their organs to you. That makes them vulnerable unless they feel really safe. So if a baby is upset, one thing we can do is just turn them on their side a little bit. We're going to soften our hands. We are going to use coherent breathing as a way for us. Let's say we got triggered from our baby crying. We need to then use our mind to say, what can I do for myself? Breath moving is a beautiful way to be creative. Use your imagination again. And what the moms in neonatal have told me over and over again, they love this, where they soften their hands. They bring their breath as an imagination up their left arm to their heart, gather all their love, and bring it down around their right arm to their baby. And then they just keep that nice, beautiful breath going.
It's almost like a beautiful circuit of love that you're creating with your breath.
Yes.
And sending to the baby.
It's wonderful. It really is. And it's an easy thing. And I've had many mothers tell me they use it all the time. So it really is, it helps us. too. So also nourishment is a big issue, especially with gas or reflux. And so if a baby has reflux, you can see I've lengthened out the way I'm holding this baby, and soothing touch all along their digestive tract. And you can see I'm trying to keep myself in a nice, soft place, even my lap. Now, burping, we're used to patting babies for burping. So this is a little involved to go into, but the idea is that we soften our hold, we just soften our arms, and we let the baby do movements that will help them bring the burp up. And then that way the patting doesn't bring them to a sympathetic overdrive and not allow that rest and digest. Here you're going to see in the video some work on digestion. I feel that this is a really nice way to work on it. Sometimes people do bicycling. This really gets at the inflammation. One hand under the baby's bottom and another hand on their descending colon, low on their left side, helps the baby really just come to a settled place. And movement. Movement is also something we can foster with us being soft at the base of this baby's spine, softening, allowing them to feel sound while they're learning these skills. So here's a video. I'm going to try and escape. This is Kristen. She is a nurse practitioner. And she got COVID while she was pregnant, and she went through so much. She just graciously did this beautiful video of her and her baby. She's on the other side of COVID, and she feels super strong. So she's very inspiring. I have 3 segments. The first one, you can see Ziggy is super upset, and he is just beside himself. This is early on of us being together on Zoom. Slowly breathe. I have a bear as a little demo for her. So there he was, very upset. The next clip, maybe 20 minutes later, and we've been doing some coherent breathing. I've been guiding her through some of these techniques, and she's going to be feeding him. And you can see she's really shifting. She's trying so hard, just very impressive.
Wow.
Open your hands. Finding that place inside of you that's soft and settled. Where might it rest? Okay, so, and then the next segment is a little bit longer. And basically what's happening in this last segment is he had been very upset after eating, and she suspected that he had a lot of gas pain. So I talked her through where to put her hands, and I'm talking her through how to settle and let the two of them just come into that slow tempo. So you can hear that now. See what happens if you slowly expand your attention out. Is it too close, too far for your baby to open and expand into? See if you glide your attention out, away from you. Is that too far away? What's comfortable? I love the dog. There's a sweet spot somewhere. Where's that sweet spot? If you glide your attention back close to you and your baby, is it too tight? Is it pressing on both of you? Slowly glide it back. Where's that place of comfort? Let your neck soften and rest. Rest in the love you feel. Nothing to do. Where's that settled place? Allowing the two of you to rest in that settled place. Accepting upset.
I feel his belly gurgling. Like, it's amazing. I feel like he's very calm. And I feel like the digestion through my fingers.
Amazing, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Wow. So you really get a sense of that co-regulation taking place there between the mother and the child, as Dr. Sanders set it up. It's almost like they're one unit, right? And
Yes.
the baby is seeking that from the mom, and the mom's ability to provide that to herself is now providing it to the baby.
Yes, and Kristen went through a beautiful process getting there, and I want to mention that word process. And just so that we understand, it is a process. And if we don't get there the first time or the second or the third, or we're tripping over options of tools, that's part of it. To trust, you'll find it.
Wonderful. And so this heart-to-heart connection that you were mentioning is so critical to the well-being, the feeling of safety and connectedness, and this ability for the child to develop in a healthy way, because I can imagine that their brain patterns are now being set in that direction as well, right?
Yes.
Can you speak a little bit to that?
Sure. So the heart-to-heart connection, we're really understanding. We used to think that cognition really drove everything down. And now we realize that heart-to-heart connection is really what's from the bottom, driving the neural connections. There's something that's called the witness self, which as the nervous system develops, comes all the way up to our prefrontal cortex. And if there's not secure attachment, if there's not anyone around that helps you feel safe, it's hard to drive the neural wiring, and you may end up being stuck in lower center. So when something happens that is disturbing, your amygdala, the part of your brain that reacts, that fight-flight part, comes forward. And we don't have the prefrontal cortex wiring to say, oh, okay, this is rough. Let me take a breath. Let me do something here. Let me walk away and sit down in a room by myself for a minute. Let me do something. So we don't have the cognition really to oversee that fight-flight. So we find ourselves stuck in a reactive mode. So what we're doing for our babies and our children by regulating ourselves and slowing down is really allowing them to actually get the neural wiring that later in life they're going to be able to say, okay, I see what's happening here. Let me do something for myself. Let me problem solve. Let me figure out what to do.
It's incredible. It's almost like, many of us think that we have to learn emotional intelligence or learn resiliency, but these patterns are being set at such a young age. I mean, really from birth and really from the moment you're holding the child, or actually in utero probably, right?
Actually, there's a lot of information about imprinting, which I want to say, Anne Weinstein wrote a book that really looks at the generations and what happens over time in imprinting and how that impacts our pregnancy, our nervous system regulation during our pregnancy, through the generations, and our delivery and being with our children. So we're really looking for resources for ourselves, especially now.
Amazing. And thank you for sharing these beautiful resources and helping mothers or fathers and in creating this really connected, safe bonding and relationship experience with their child, and the methods in which we can give that to ourselves and then the child, and for showing us what that can look like at such a young age. That was really wonderful.
Thank you.
I'm sure there are many people here who are wondering, Dr. Sanders, Phyllis, how do we get in touch with you? This is such amazing information. Maybe there's ways that some of our audience members can work with you privately or with the networks that they're a part of. Can we share, Chris, their information through the chat, or would you like to narrate it and we'll share it in the chat so everyone can copy paste it and have it for the records? Yes,
and I did put my email in the resource page, and I am happy to share Aries, A-R-I-E-S, like the zodiac, CST, craniosacral therapy, at comcast.net. And I'm happy to be with anyone, and I'm happy to do some pro bono work. I'm happy to support families.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. There's our contact information. Do you have any final parting words to our audience members? We're getting a lot of really wonderful messages and thank you and messages of support for what you're doing. So I think the audience is really loving this. But if you have any final words you'd like to share with the audience.
I'm just grateful. Thank you for letting me here. It's really a beautiful experience to be able to support families. And I love being with you, Dr. Sanders.
Thank you, Phyllis, and likewise. And what I would say is leverage relationships and leverage technology. It may not be perfect, but it's what we have right now. So use it to its fullest extent.
Exactly. And I almost say, the words social distancing is a misnomer. We can stay socially connected. It's physical distancing, but we can still remain as connected as ever. So thank you both for that reminder, and continue on with your beautiful work. And thank you to our great audience for being in touch with us and for joining this. And thank you to our events producer, Chris, for helping produce this event. We're getting more texts coming in of thank you. from Nikki Work, Stephanie, Farhana, Anna, Kamesis. So thank you all. You're getting a lot of love right now, Phyllis and
Thank
Dr.
you.
Sanders.
And love back.
And love back.
Absolutely.
I agree.